everyone. Everyone knows about the Sahara, but do you truly know what the ins and outs of it are? This is a podcast all about the Sahara, and I have my beautiful, gorgeous co-host, Elise Burk, with me.
I wouldn't say that, but thank you. I'm here, the expert of the Sahara today.
She has a lot more information about it that she's going to go over for you guys, and I'll chirp in here and there.
Absolutely. We'll start with some, background info and some fast facts. So, the Sahara is actually 9,200,000 square kilometers, which is actually insane. It's the world's largest hot desert, as most of you know, but it's actually the third largest desert in general, because you have Antarctica that trumps it.
I didn't realize that the Antarctica was a desert.
Yeah, it's a cold desert, so it's valid because there's nothing there. Yeah. So it makes sense.
Okay.
So we got hot deserts and cold deserts, but we're talking about our hot desert today.
Okay, all right.
And it's also the largest source of airborne mineral dust because of all that sand and all those minerals that are floating around in there and all the winds and everything. Yep. We'll go more into that later, though. Okay. And it covers the great amount of North Africa, so about 31% of the North African continent, or Africa as the continent. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. And you may think it's just sand dunes, but there's actually, tons of topographical features, really? Like plateaus, mountains, fault lines, dry valleys, some more dunes, obviously, plains, of course, some lakes.
Sounds like a lot of sand.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot
that
of
is
sand.
true. We got some volcanoes in there too.
Oh, so it's hot sand.
Yes, exactly. I don't think any active ones, but they're still looking more into that. Okay, so that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that there's not really a lot of research done.
No.
At all.
Not at all, surprisingly. You would think, but it's similar to the ocean and space. It's so massive that it's just not enough.
It's not enough to discover.
Yes, literally, which is
too
crazy.
much of the same thing all around.
I know. Nobody wants to be there long enough. Nobody wants to be there long enough.
I would die.
Exactly. And their water sources are rare, but there are a few. We have the Nile and the Niger, which are two large rivers. Everyone knows about the Nile, but the Niger is really important for civilization as well. There's about 20 seasonal lakes and aquifers, and the Sahara is very big on oases. So pop up fault oases where the groundwater ascends because of the rock on the bottom, or basin ones, which are depressions.
So is the water cold or is it hot?
I don't know. I would assume both, probably. It just depends. I feel they're limited groundwater too. So
touch it would burn my skin.
Oh, I'm sure. The sun surface, it's crazy.
Drink it at night.
Yes, true. Which we'll get more to when we hit the climate. Okay. But these oases serve as stepping stones throughout the area. Mm-hmm. So they're not right in one area. They're more passed around and throughout the location. Yeah. So that has contributed to migratory birds, people, civilization, tons of stuff like that. So those water sources are extremely important, obviously.
Okay.
Oh my god. And then we'll move on to the climate. So the north of the Sahara is more dry subtropical climate, and the south is more dry tropical climate. So that brings into and you wouldn't think it necessarily tropical but since they're close to the equator, that's how it averages out. Yeah. And the hottest months are usually 38 to 40 degrees Celsius, which is insane. But at nighttime, it can reach 13 to 20 degrees Celsius and can drop to freezing in the winter. So that's really crazy.
Yeah.
And then there's a very low precipitation. Not participation. Both actually, to be fair. And then there's a high duration of sunshine, obviously, and very poor soil just because of that limited precipitation, and some of the salt water brings it out from the surrounding coast.
Yep.
But there is a thing called African humid periods, which are AHPs, and these are big periods of time where the African North Africa is just very humid and brings a lot of monsoon water and precipitation in there, and that leads to more vegetative areas. So they only happen certain times. I think the last one was BC sometime, but they are very crucial for the vegetation throughout it. So
it's a lot of information.
I know, it's crazy. You would think the Sahara was not informative, it didn't have a lot, which it's not studied very much.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yes, exactly. And they're learning more every every day. So, like, that's really good.
Yeah.
So, now we'll move on to, like, the species diversity. Yep. So, like, in ecology. So, overall, it's very lower in drylands, but within species diversity is very pronounced due to the isolation of the habitats.
Yeah.
So, they're more unique in these drylands because they're so, like, limited areas.
There's a lot of space, but not a lot of, like, resources.
Exactly. And usually those are, like, around the water sources. So, these organisms have to adapt, like, to all the harsh stuff.
Yeah.
And they're usually small due to water, like, to limit that water loss as well. Some of the most prominent are hemicryptophytes.
That's a big word.
Yes. Which are just basically saying, like, herbaceous perennials. So they, like, live more than 2 years.
Okay.
So, like, grasses.
Yeah.
Some shrubs. There's about 500 species of grasses, shrubs, and trees in the Sahara, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
There's some algae and crustaceans and snails, of course. A decent amount of insects, reptiles, and amphibians. Which are really cool, like the dung beetle. I'm sure people have heard of that, where it's like the ones that mess with poop and lay their eggs in poop. Yeah. Which is insane.
Those animals are like, they don't need a lot of resources, I feel like. But there's like a decent amount of mammals that live there that people don't realize. Like, you don't think about like a lot of larger animals being there, but there are a decent amount.
No, seriously. Like even ostriches like are one of them. Like in certain parts, like especially in the northern part, like there's ostriches, which is crazy because like those are only supposed to be in Australia.
They also have a lot more, like, senses, though, too. So, like, the hot sand, I imagine, being a lot hotter on their feet and everything. So, I think it's really surprising when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, we obviously know camels. Like, they store... These camels store, like, fat.
The, like, OG desert animal.
Yeah, literally. Literally the ones, like, that make
or break our desert.
The desert, exactly. And they're used a lot, obviously, for transportation and stuff like that. But, like, they store fat in their humps, which is really cool. So, that's how they adapt. And all these animals adapt. So, there's, like, around 70 species of mammals.
Yeah, I imagine them being very different from, like, any species we would have here.
100%. Not just because of the climate, but because of those harsh conditions and because of the isolation that the Sahara does.
Change so much for them.
Exactly. So now that we talked about the little behind background information, we're going to move on into like how the Sahara really like
the
truly
real deep stuff.
Yes, truly like affects the world and how we affect it as people.
Yeah.
So basically on a global perspective, the Sahara is really important for like weather and air circulation and everything like that. So like it even affects places like the Arctic and like Antarctica and like certain parts of the Pacific. Like it's super important. It actually they have their own monsoon system, which is called the West African monsoon, and the intensity is it's the world most prominent, first of all, and the intensity has a domino effect to the surrounding areas. So like I was saying, and it's crucial for socioeconomic stability because it gives access to those resources. It brings more water in, it brings more precipitation. I struggle with that word, I'm so sorry. Precipitation, you know. And when this monsoon system is dormant, it causes famine and water scarcity. So like basically it depends on if you bring water in or not. Yeah, it's insane. And then also, like I said, like the Sahara is like the biggest airborne emissions, like dust emissions, and that contributes to the climate variability as well because it like can affect solar radiation, cloud properties, atmospheric and oceanic circulation.
Yeah, there's a lot of loose particles, and I imagine like when like any like sandstorm type of thing where it's like it's bringing a lot of stuff into the air. Yeah,
similar to like we all talk about volcanoes and like smoke, that how that like can block out light and stuff. So it's same thing with
like
the Sahara.
Like a tornado tearing stuff up and pulling it through the air.
Literally, exactly. It's so insane. So it really does like affect us even more than we think.
It travels far. Think about how like sand gets in places that you don't want sand to be.
So true. I can't. Every time at the beach,
time you're at the beach, sand gets everywhere, and it travels pretty far. Like yeah. So I can imagine
it just stays around all the time.
That large of amounts with those big winds, with those dunes. I can imagine going pretty far and spreading pretty far. Yeah.
Exactly, especially with like the plains areas, because like they do have plateaus too, so that helps block it a little bit. So certain areas don't get much of that, but like when it's just plains, it's like crazy
too, though, with those dunes.
Yeah, 100%. It's insane. Dangerous. That's why like the colonization of the Sahara and everything like that is really difficult. But because of our human impact, we've like really started to change that, which is crazy.
Whenever you think of like sand winds, I always think of like the Three Little Pigs the three little pigs
when he
thing,
blows the house down.
The house down.
True.
All that wind, it's like they were not prepared for.
No, you're so right.
They were not prepared. And then you get to the end, and it's like colonization and like human impacts changing so much. It's kind of like the same thing.
Yeah, no, 100%, because you have the different factors. So I feel you on that.
Story could relate.
Relate more than you think, because I think about that every day, not gonna lie. But yeah, the human impact, especially in the past, has really affected the Sahara Desert more than we think. Like, everything's more than we think with this desert. Yeah. And climate change especially has affected the whole world, not necessarily just the desert, but everything. Mm-hmm. So like, as I was talking about, the West African monsoon can become more predictable with climate change because of the changes in pressure, the sea surface temperature can increase this intensity. So it can make it hard to predict, which can also lead to like limited like civilization, urbanization, because you're so worried about like that different, like the harsh storms and everything like that. Yeah. And then also because of climate change, the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration is increasing, which does stimulate plant growth, surprisingly.
Makes sense.
Because yeah, true. I know, right? Because it closes the stomata of the plant, which limits water loss. Yeah. So it really helps in the Sahara to limit the water loss of the plants, which is great.
Retention is crazy.
Yeah. Which helps a lot, especially when there are no oases around or any of that large water or the water scarcity and everything. Yeah. But this can also lead to higher temperatures, the CO2. So this increases stress and can lead to soil drying, which increases the dust emissions, lower the humidity, and give more extreme temps. So it's kind of a pros and cons kind of thing for that.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
does it.
Exactly. Unfortunately, and these warmer temperatures can also affect plant reproduction. Yeah. So this can because of the heat sensitivity, because it's really important for that.
Burning out
and germination and everything. Yeah, exactly.
I think germination could be higher depending on like higher, but not higher because wind helps a lot with germination. Yeah, depending on the species, obviously, but like if you don't have the right area to for it to germinate, it's not going to go very well.
Well, the good thing about that, going back into species, like the good thing about that is some of the plants in the Sahara are like the reincarnation plant. I don't know if you've seen that before, but they literally can like stay in their seeds for such a long time until that water comes. Yeah. So that's also good with that. So because of the extra wind and that reproduction and stuff. So that is
makes
good.
It really durable.
Oh, 100%. Every species.
I wish I were like that.
True. Could just wait out for when time was right.
Reincarnation plant.
No, seriously.
Little sugar.
When I don't get my sweet treat and I like can't function for the rest of the day. True. Felt. But yeah, also this goes with technology too. As our world and society get more like advanced, there's going to be more technology, which can affect a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Whether good or bad, you never know. But it can increase the colonization of possible areas that would normally like not be accessible. Yeah. And this obviously threatens the ecosystem. So like the urbanization of infrastructure development in particular areas, including like promoting tourist and mining activities. So like oil is big in the Sahara, as well as like the natural gas and minerals. So like as we need more of these things because they're finite things on Earth, we have to go more into the Sahara. Yeah. And this can lead to like habitat destruction and like deforestation and everything, and pollution and all of that. Yeah. Specifically in like Morocco and Egypt, of course, because those are like the bigger countries. Yeah. And also we get more man-made water sources, which can bring up unique vegetation that varies from the surrounding flora. So, which can lead to more like invasives and non-native type of plants and certain organisms, which not necessarily are going to be a great thing depending on where you are, especially in those isolated communities. Yeah. Also, humans really impact the Sahara based on their land use. Yeah. So usually all these civilizations are around water sources, like said earlier, like rivers and the oases, because of the resources. Use those. Yes, absolutely. Of course, because we exhaust it all the time, especially like because the Sahara has very limited groundwater because of the precipitation. It always goes back to that, but it has a lot, but as we keep using it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse if it's not continued, It can also the land use also obviously impacts local vegetation trends, especially with like farming systems and the introduction of domestic livestock with overgrazing, which kind of sucks. But because of the land use, the Sahara has also been used for connectivity. So a lot of places use it as like migratory corridors. So like long distance dispersal of plants and animals has happened, and even herds of species use it as like a place to get through. But yeah, basically humans have also impacted this inaccessible place, which is crazy. But that's really like, and as we get more research into it, it's going to be very, very crucial that we figure this stuff out and learn from that past, you know? So yeah,
I think a lot of it's just like things that we see that we're recording. A lot of it's not like actual like physical tests done.
No, 100%.
Or anything like that. So it's crazy how much we know just from physically
little observations. No, because as we were looking at studies, we literally could not find much
almost every
quantitative data.
Every study we looked at, it was like there's not much information or studies done into this subject. So.
It's just like predictions mostly. Like that's what I found a lot, like predictions as you go on, and like, which is great. Like things always should be studied, and it's cool that like something we've always known about is not necessarily studied. But like, so you have opportunities, and that leads to more future opportunities.
It would be really interesting to like hear from like people who live there personally and like hear what they say about the impact and things. 'Cause everyone in their own state or country has personal opinions about the way that they
100%.
live or the things that are there. So
100%.
it'd be really interesting to hear what they have to say in a study, or like if you did like some kind of test on them about that. Be interesting what they have to say about it, because they're gonna have different opinions than any scientist or researcher does when they just show up for like a month or two.
No, 100%. Yeah. Like I know that's the same thing with Hawaii. Yeah. Like they talk a lot about how the locals don't like all the civilization that happened, which is, I mean, valid. They have tons of unique species as well, so it's kind of similar to that. And I found like in Egypt, like you would, we always think of like, because the pyramids are there, obviously, that's like the main thing.
So you have big attraction.
They have that yeah, exactly. They have that attraction, but like if you look at that, we all think of like the pyramids as like in this one area of the Sahara Desert, like, but it's not. It's like surrounded by cities, which it wasn't like 100, 200 years ago, which is insane.
Causes a lot of foot
as things happen, exactly, which can also bring up dust emissions. It's just all this like domino effects that happen.
I think dust is gonna be one of their biggest problems.
Oh, 100%.
It causes so many health issues. Oh my goodness. Oil too.
Yeah.
There's some research we saw about oil digging, and there wasn't a lot on it though.
No, because people want to keep it, you know, the hush
on the down low.
Hush hush. We need it, you know.
We don't need to tell them.
No, exactly. But that always, all of that like leads into our future, what we have the impact on it, and like I feel like as we lean more towards a greener Earth, which I feel like is happening personally, this is like causing us to want to learn more about certain things. So as we know now, like I said, the African monsoon system is really important, and we go through these periods of humid periods in the Sahara, and that is predicted to be continuing as rainfall is continuing to increase from the droughts in the 1970s. So it's been like 40 years since the 1970s. 50 years?
I can't do
50 years or something. 50 years. So, like, as it's going on, like, we're now starting to get out of those droughts. So, we might see more things pop up, which is really cool. And that leads to, like, vegetation recovery. So, that's amazing. And that will be very helpful for everybody, even the Sahara, like, for all the organisms that are there.
Yeah, huge.
And researching, as we talked about past events and, like, what the Sahara is right now, researching these past events will be able to predict future events. So, like, another African humid period, so we can know when that happens, or more of the West African monsoon pattern, so we can be ready for these storms and these dust storms and everything like that. It will just help us keep being proactive rather than reactive. And there's also large scale afforestation periods, which is like bringing vegetation back to, like, native vegetation back to the Sahara. So instead of like cutting down all the trees, which always happens, deforestation, we're trying to build that back.
That helps with bringing like species out in the open that like we might not even know there. The Sahara's definitely not been mapped fully.
No, 100% not.
There's too many like dangerous things going on out there that nobody really wants to spend that many nights out in the desert.
Oh, 100%.
But it would probably, like, we had talked about the
resurrection plant.
Resurrection
Yes.
And there could be other plants or life like that
Yeah,
we just
100%.
don't know that because we haven't explored enough.
100%.
Yeah,
and that's I did find a study that was talking about that, the study that we cited in our paper, that like they are coming up with, every time they visit there, they are finding new things like that they didn't think were there.
And bringing back some of those like plant systems will help a lot with like finding those species that were hidden in like the
100%
little ecosystem,
a little area, because
they
are so isolated. So that really
it's more
helps.
rare.
100%. And this also leads into like the active regreening project. So I already talked about like us like moving towards a greener earth. Yeah. This is also happening like around the Sahara and in the surrounding like encompassing countries. So this is again to promote just that vegetation growth. Like although it wouldn't make the Sahara like as dry as we say today, it's really good. Vegetation growth is always good as long as it's like usually native and important, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. But there have also been adaptation strategies to combat these water scarcities. So because we had that big drought in the 1970s, 1980s, they've really tried to find out these strategies to combat this for all the people living there, all of the organisms, everything. So whether this is like creating more water systems or like finding more unknown like oases, stuff like that. Not figuring out how to use the rivers in a more effective way with dams and certain things. It's really helped with that. But unfortunately, because like the countries in that encompass the Sahara, so like Algeria and Egypt and Morocco and all those places, it's really hard to like get them like funding for that because they have so much other things going on. Of course every country does, but like because most of them are third world countries, it's really hard for us to get that funding for that.
They're bringing in a lot of stuff into their countries because they don't have the resources
exports,
necessarily.
Imports,
so it's taking up a lot of expenses to be able to do that. So I understand
100%, and hopefully like that will change, obviously. Yeah. But like that just comes with time. So hopefully in time, money, resources, people willing to do it, like volunteers. So like hopefully it goes on. But from what we're looking at, it is increasing. And as time goes on, hopefully the Sahara will be a great ecosystem more than it already is.
Yeah. But hopefully not change it too much.
Yeah, not change it too much because I still like hearing about it.
Sprinkle a little life
sprinkle just a little bit of maybe plants, we think. Maybe. Just a little bit more. Maybe fix the water. Yeah, exactly. Maybe keep the rainfall going. Maybe just a little bit, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that's about it for the Sahara, which is really cool. You think not that much, but there was actually
there's a lot of tiny details that a lot of people don't think of.
So I
hope that helps out whoever's listening to this and can get a little more information about the Sahara that most people don't know about.
Yeah, literally.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.